There's a moment every woman feels, not when you say it, but when your energy changes. The calls get shorter, the effort fades, the presence disappears. And she knows. Not because she's paranoid, but because a woman's intuition doesn't lie. You see, when a woman realizes you've lost interest, something inside her shifts. She stops waiting, she stops explaining, and she stops trying to prove her worth. In that silence, she doesn't lose herself. She finds herself. And that's the moment you lose not just her attention, but her access. Because when a woman chooses her peace over your presence, that's when she becomes untouchable. A woman always knows, even before you say a word. There's a shift in your tone, the way you stop looking her in the eyes, the way conversations become shorter and your laughter fades. She senses it, not because she's suspicious, but because her intuition is built to read energy, not words. You can hide behind politeness, behind busyness, behind the excuses you think sound believable, but you can't hide energy. She feels distance before you ever create space. And the moment she realizes you've lost interest, something inside her goes quiet. That silence isn't weakness. It's awareness. It's the beginning of her emotional recalibration. She doesn't confront right away. She studies. She observes your patterns. When you call, how you respond, what you no longer say. Every action becomes data. Every change becomes proof. And while you're thinking she's unaware, she's actually processing everything, calmly, intelligently, strategically. Because the truth is, women rarely react without reason. When she finally decides to pull away, it's not an impulse. It's a conclusion. That's the moment her emotional energy shifts. She starts to detach, not out of anger, but out of self-respect. She no longer seeks your validation because she understands something profound. Someone who truly values her wouldn't make her question her worth. She begins to redirect her focus, not toward what's missing, but toward what she deserves. And that's when her confidence begins to rebuild itself. The woman who once waited for your attention now invests that same energy into herself, her goals, her peace, her growth. She might still talk to you, but it's different now. There's a calmness in her tone, a quiet certainty in her words. She no longer chases conversations or fills silences with explanations. She's not cold, she's composed. That composure is what unsettles you because you realize she's not reacting, she's releasing. She's no longer emotionally available for inconsistency. She's no longer interested in half effort. She's reclaiming her emotional territory. And as she does, something incredible happens. She glows differently. Not because she wants to prove anything to you, but because she's remembering who she is without your uncertainty clouding her light. That glow isn't revenge. It's rebirth. It's a woman who has walked through disappointment and found her balance on the other side. And when she reaches that point, you can't access her anymore. Not because she hates you, but because she's outgrown the version of herself that tolerated confusion. So when a woman realizes you've lost interest, she doesn't crumble. She transforms. She doesn't scream. She doesn't chase. She doesn't beg for your attention. She reclaims her power in silence. And by the time you notice her absence, she's already rebuilt herself into someone stronger, wiser, and far more self-assured than before. Because losing your interest didn't break her. It reminded her that her peace, her worth, and her energy were never meant to depend on anyone else. When a woman realizes you've checked out emotionally, she doesn't immediately react. She pauses, she steps back and starts observing, not out of insecurity, but out of awareness. Her emotional intelligence kicks in like a quiet radar, scanning every detail without you even noticing. She watches how your words no longer align with your actions. She feels the difference between presence and politeness. She can tell when your "I'm just tired" really means "I'm not invested anymore." And instead of confronting you with desperation, she stays still, allowing the truth to reveal itself naturally. She knows emotions can cloud judgment, so she waits. She lets time do the talking because time always exposes what consistency once covered. In this phase, She's no longer trying to make things work. She's trying to understand if it's still worth it. She asks herself quiet questions. Do I feel valued? Do I still feel seen? Is this love? Or am I holding on to what love used to be? Her calmness during this time is misunderstood by many, but that calmness is control. It's her choosing not to let disappointment dictate her next move. She doesn't chase because she understands that attention earned through fear of loss is temporary. She wants something deeper, something real, a connection that doesn't rely on reminders or begging for effort. That's the difference between a woman who reacts and a woman who responds. Reaction is impulsive. Response is intelligent. She chooses response. She watches without anger, she listens without interrupting, and she evaluates without assuming. Her silence doesn't mean she's ignoring you, it means she's gathering evidence. While she's observing, she's also evolving. She learns more about her emotional limits and her capacity to forgive. She studies your behavior not to criticize you, but to decide her boundaries moving forward. She's emotionally intelligent enough to understand that love alone doesn't sustain respect, and patience doesn't excuse neglect. So, as she observes, she starts preparing herself emotionally to either rebuild with honesty or to walk away with grace. You might mistake her distance for indifference, but it's not that. It's discernment. She's emotionally mature enough to know that forcing connection ruins authenticity. She doesn't manipulate. She doesn't guilt trip. She simply matches your energy. And when that energy no longer serves her peace, she releases it. Because emotional intelligence isn't about controlling others. It's about mastering yourself in moments that could break you. By the time you realize how quietly she detached, it's already too late. You'll notice she no longer argues about what matters to her, no longer tries to fix what you won't acknowledge. She's still polite, still kind, but her investment has changed. And that's when it hits you. She never stopped caring. She just started caring more about herself. That's what emotional intelligence looks like in a woman. Not loud, not dramatic, but deeply aware, composed, and strong enough to let go without resentment. Silence is powerful, and a woman understands that better than anyone. When she feels your disinterest, she doesn't rush to fill the void with words or chase explanations that will only bruise her pride. Instead, she goes quiet. That silence isn't confusion, it's clarity. She knows exactly what's happening, but she chooses not to give it more of her energy. Her quiet becomes her protection, her boundary, her armor. While others may see her stillness as weakness, she knows it's strength. It's her way of saying, I see everything, and I choose not to lower myself to meet that energy. She's learned that confrontation doesn't always bring closure. Sometimes it just opens wounds that don't need to bleed again. So she steps back and lets silence do the talking. You'll notice she doesn't text first. She doesn't explain her feelings. She doesn't try to decode your behavior anymore. That's not coldness, it's self-respect. Because there comes a point when a woman realizes that her peace is worth more than being understood by someone who no longer listens. Her silence is not the absence of words, it's the presence of wisdom. She's calm now. That calmness unsettles you because it's different from what you're used to. You expected anger, maybe tears, maybe a desperate attempt to hold on. But instead, she gives you distance. She doesn't demand an explanation because she already found her answer in your inconsistency. She no longer reacts to the silence you gave her. She mirrors it. And in doing so, she reclaims control over the narrative. She stops feeding the story where she's the one who cares too much. Now, her quietness says everything you need to hear, that she's done performing for someone who's already left the stage. In her silence, she begins to heal. It's in that space of stillness that she starts listening to herself again. She hears her own thoughts without the noise of confusion. She feels her emotions without guilt. And slowly, she remembers who she was before she started fighting for someone who stopped fighting for her. Every minute of silence becomes a lesson in strength. She learns that not responding doesn't mean she's weak. It means she values her energy enough to use it wisely. And when you finally notice her quiet, it hits differently. The absence of her voice, her questions, her warmth. It starts to echo. You'll scroll through the conversations trying to find the woman who used to fill the gaps. But she's no longer there. That silence you once ignored now feels heavy. Because the truth is, when a woman stops talking, she's not giving you the silent treatment. She's giving you the final message. You no longer have access to my emotions. That is the power of her silence. It's not about punishment. It's about peace. She doesn't need to make you understand what you lost. Her silence already did. And in that silence, she doesn't just end the chapter. She rewrites the entire story, with herself as the main character, finally free, finally whole, and no longer waiting to be heard. When a woman finally reaches the point where her emotions no longer control her, something profound happens inside her. The tears stop coming, not because she doesn't feel anything, but because she has felt everything there was to feel. She's cried enough, questioned enough, hoped enough. She's exhausted every emotional path that once tied her to you. And now she steps into logic, that quiet, powerful space where her mind takes the lead. Her clarity sharpens. Her heart may still ache, but her thoughts become stronger than her pain. She stops asking why and starts saying, enough. That's the shift people rarely notice until it's too late. She begins to see things as they are, not as she wishes they could be. She looks back and realizes how much of her energy was spent trying to fix what she didn't break. She understands that love isn't supposed to feel like begging, waiting, or convincing. Her emotions once clouded her judgment, but now her logic clears the fog. She doesn't look for excuses to justify your distance. She accepts the truth for what it is. Acceptance. That's her turning point. And acceptance doesn't mean she's okay with it. It means she's done fighting what's already gone. In this state, she starts to rebuild boundaries. Not the ones meant to keep people out, but the ones meant to keep her peace in. She becomes protective of her energy in a way she never was before. She learns to say no without guilt, to walk away without needing closure, to detach without bitterness. That's her strength, choosing reason over reaction. Her mind becomes her guide, and her emotions follow her lead instead of leading her astray. The woman who once overthought now analyzes. The woman who once overgave now evaluates. She sees red flags she once ignored, not with regret, but with understanding. She doesn't hate you, and she doesn't even blame you anymore. She simply sees that losing interest wasn't her failure. It was your choice. And she's learned not to chase choices that aren't mutual. Her logic tells her that love without effort isn't love. It's dependency disguised as affection. So she releases you, not with anger, but with reason. You'll feel the difference. She doesn't argue anymore because she's not seeking validation. She doesn't defend herself because she knows her worth isn't up for debate. Her silence becomes sharper, her boundaries clearer. She's not cold, she's clear. She's not heartless, she's healed. And when she reaches that level of awareness, she's unstoppable. Because a woman who has shifted from emotion to logic can see through manipulation, through inconsistency, through every form of half-love disguised as care. By the time you realize her calmness isn't indifference, but freedom, she's already miles ahead, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. She's no longer driven by how she feels about you, but by how she feels about herself. And that's when she becomes untouchable. Because when a woman chooses logic over emotion, she's no longer looking for love to complete her. She's looking for peace to sustain her. When that shift happens, it's no longer about him, it's about her. The woman who once spent sleepless nights replaying conversations, rereading messages, and trying to understand where things went wrong suddenly changes her focus. She stops asking why he lost interest because she realizes that question doesn't heal her, it keeps her stuck. Instead, she begins to ask herself the harder, braver question. Why did she stay when the signs were already there? Why did she accept half love and call it enough? Why did she silence her own needs just to keep someone comfortable? That's where growth begins. not in blaming, but in understanding herself. At first, it hurts. That realization burns because it demands honesty. She has to face the fact that she gave too much, waited too long, and forgave too easily. But she also learns that this was not weakness. It was her capacity to love. She just gave it to someone who didn't know how to hold it. And now she promises herself that the next time, love will not cost her self-respect. She decides that her kindness will never again be mistaken for tolerance. She understands that loving someone deeply should never mean losing herself in the process. This is where her self-worth starts to rise from the ashes. She starts rebuilding it one truth at a time. She remembers what she brings to the table, her loyalty, her depth, her strength. She looks in the mirror and finally sees what she forgot she was. The woman staring back at her isn't broken. She's awakening. She's realizing that she was never too much, too emotional, or too demanding. She just asked the wrong person to meet her halfway, and that awareness changes everything. Her energy begins to shift. She no longer wakes up waiting for a message or goes to sleep hoping for a sign. Her happiness is no longer dependent on whether someone chooses her or not. She chooses herself every single day. That choice becomes her foundation. She starts doing the things she once postponed, reconnecting with parts of herself she had neglected. She reads more, smiles more, dreams again. The light in her eyes slowly returns, not because someone reignited it, but because she remembered she was the source all along. And when she finally finds peace in her own presence, something powerful happens. She becomes unshakable. The opinions of others no longer define her worth. The absence of attention no longer feels like rejection. She stops settling for almost, for maybe, for sometimes. She now knows that being alone is not emptiness, it's clarity. She's no longer chasing love, she's embodying it. So, when you see her now, calm, grounded, confident, it's not that she's heartless, it's that she's healed. She's no longer searching for someone to complete her because she realized she was never incomplete. That question, why did I tolerate less than I deserve, taught her everything she needed to know about herself. And now, she will never let anyone make her forget her value again. When a woman finally reclaims her power, it doesn't happen with noise or revenge. It happens quietly. She doesn't announce it to the world. She simply begins to move differently. The energy she once poured into proving her worth to someone else now becomes the fuel that drives her back to herself. She starts waking up with purpose again, not with worry. The same heart that once ached for attention now beats with focus. She remembers the things that make her feel alive, the dreams she postponed, the ambitions she dimmed, the passions she set aside, and little by little, she rebuilds herself from the inside out. Her peace becomes sacred. She starts protecting it like her life depends on it, because in a way, it does. She stops entertaining conversations that drain her. She stops chasing validation from people who never understood her value. She learns that not everyone deserves her time, her kindness, or her emotional access. For the first time in a long time, she puts herself first, not out of selfishness, but out of survival. Because she now understands that pouring into people who don't pour back only empties her spirit, and she refuses to feel empty again. Her focus sharpens. Instead of waiting for someone to see her potential, she invests in herself. She starts setting goals that challenge her, and she works in silence to achieve them. Her confidence doesn't come from compliments anymore. It comes from accomplishment. Every small win reminds her that she doesn't need someone to complete her. She just needs to keep showing up for herself. She becomes disciplined, not because she's trying to prove a point, but because she's building a life that aligns with her worth. As she grows stronger, she begins to notice how different her energy feels. The same situations that once triggered her now feel irrelevant. The same people who used to shake her peace can no longer reach her. She doesn't react. She responds. She doesn't beg. She attracts. Her calmness becomes her new power. It's not that she stopped caring, it's that she stopped caring about things that don't grow her. And that's the quiet strength that confuses those who once underestimated her. Her glow changes too. It's not about appearance, it's about presence. There's something magnetic about a woman who has found her center again. You can feel her confidence without her saying a word. You can see the peace in her smile, the certainty in her walk. She no longer looks for love to save her. She brings love wherever she goes. Her energy shifts from needing to giving, from seeking approval to radiating self-assurance. And that shift, that inner glow, draws everything back to her. Opportunities, respect, and genuine connections. By reclaiming her power, she doesn't just heal, she transforms. She stops living like a reflection of someone else's interest and starts living as the full expression of her own potential. And that's when she becomes truly unstoppable. Because when a woman finally learns that her energy is her greatest asset, she stops wasting it trying to be understood. She uses it to build, to rise, and to lead. And once she's in that place of peace and purpose, there's nothing left for her to chase. Everything she needs begins to find her. Walking away is not the same as giving up. It's a conscious choice to stop pouring energy into something that no longer grows her. When a woman reaches that point, it's not because she stopped caring, it's because she started caring about herself more. Detachment doesn't come easily. It's learned through heartbreak, disappointment, and countless moments of trying to fix what was never hers to fix. But once she learns it, it becomes her greatest strength. She understands that discipline isn't just about what you do, it's also about what you refuse to tolerate. And sometimes, walking away is the highest form of self-discipline there is. At first, detachment feels strange. It feels like losing something that used to define her. She'll catch herself reaching for her phone, wondering if she should text, wondering if maybe this time things will be different. But then she remembers the reality she's already lived. She remembers how it felt to fight for someone who stopped meeting her halfway. That memory keeps her grounded. Detachment isn't about suppressing emotion, it's about choosing peace over repetition. It's understanding that some patterns don't change, no matter how much she loves or how hard she tries. With each passing day, the emotional grip loosens. She starts to see things with new eyes. The distance gives her perspective, and the silence gives her clarity. She begins to understand that her worth was never determined by how long someone stayed, but by how deeply she stayed true to herself. The more she detaches, the more she regains her balance. It's not coldness, it's composure. It's her learning to manage her emotions instead of being ruled by them. She realizes that peace is not found in holding on, but in letting go with grace. There's power in not reacting. There's power in refusing to participate in chaos. She starts choosing her battles carefully, not because she's afraid to fight, but because she understands her energy is precious. Not everyone deserves her response, her time, or her presence. And that's where real discipline lives, in restraint. She doesn't need to prove her point anymore, because her peace speaks louder than any argument ever could. She knows that walking away from what no longer serves her doesn't make her weak, it makes her wise. Soon, detachment becomes her peace. She no longer needs closure from others because she creates it within herself. She stops waiting for apologies and explanations. She gives herself permission to move forward without them. And in that release, she finds freedom. The freedom to be whole without validation. The freedom to live without resentment. The freedom to love without losing herself again. By mastering detachment, she doesn't become distant. She becomes deliberate. Every choice she makes now comes from clarity, not emotion. Every person she allows in must meet her at the level of her peace, not her pain. Because she has learned that true strength isn't holding on. It's knowing exactly when to let go. And when she does, she doesn't just walk away from what hurt her. She walks toward everything she deserves. There's something almost poetic about the way a woman transforms after being hurt. It doesn't happen overnight, but slowly, steadily, she starts to rise. The same pain that once broke her now becomes her motivation. The silence she was forced into becomes her space to rebuild. At first, she keeps to herself, not because she's hiding, but because she's healing. She's piecing herself back together quietly, privately, without announcing it to the world. Her glow-up isn't revenge, it's renewal. She's not trying to prove anyone wrong, she's finally proving herself right. She begins by tending to the parts of herself she once neglected. The emotional wounds that used to control her start turning into lessons. She learns to channel her pain into purpose, her frustration into focus. Her mornings start differently now, no longer checking her phone, no longer waiting for messages that never come. She starts journaling, reading, moving, creating. Every little act of self-care becomes a form of rebellion against who she used to be. She realizes she doesn't need closure from anyone else. She's capable of giving it to herself. That's where the real transformation begins, not in appearance, but in mindset. Her glow doesn't just show up in how she looks, it radiates from how she feels. There's a shift in her posture, in her voice, in the way she walks into a room. She carries herself with a quiet kind of confidence that doesn't need validation. People notice the difference, though they can't quite explain it. What they see is peace. What they feel is strength. She's no longer trying to be seen, yet she stands out effortlessly. That's what happens when a woman starts living in alignment with her worth. She glows without trying. Emotionally, she's sharper now. The woman who once settled for uncertainty now demands clarity. She no longer entertains half-effort or half-truths. She's learned that consistency is the language of genuine people, and she refuses to translate mixed signals anymore. Mentally, she's focused. The energy that used to go into fixing others now fuels her own growth. She's building her career, her goals, her independence. Physically, she starts to change too. Not because she's trying to impress anyone, but because healing naturally makes you lighter. She's not weighed down by confusion or disappointment anymore. And the most powerful part is that she no longer seeks recognition. The woman she's becoming is her own reward. She starts attracting better energy, people who match her effort, situations that align with her peace. The same people who once overlooked her begin to notice her evolution, but she's not looking back. Her glow-up isn't meant to make anyone regret losing her. It's meant to remind her that she never lost herself. She was just buried under the weight of what she thought love was supposed to be. Now, she shines differently. Her eyes reflect calm, her presence commands respect, and her energy feels untouchable. The woman who once waited for someone to choose her now chooses herself every single day. And that choice, that unwavering decision to grow through what was meant to break her, is what makes her glow impossible to ignore. There comes a point in every woman's healing where she looks back and realizes how differently she used to define love. What she once called passion was often chaos. What she mistook for chemistry was inconsistency disguised as excitement. She thought love had to feel unpredictable, full of highs and lows, because that's what made it real, or so she believed. But with time and pain as her teachers, she begins to see the truth. Real love isn't supposed to drain her. It's supposed to ground her. It's not supposed to make her question her worth. It's supposed to make her feel safe in it. She starts recognizing the difference between attention and affection. Attention is temporary. It's loud, it's fast, it's easy to fake. It shows up when it's convenient and disappears when things get real. Affection, though, is quiet and steady. It's in the effort, in the consistency, in the way someone shows up without needing to be reminded. She realizes that attention seeks validation, but affection builds connection. And the kind of love she wants now is not about being noticed, but about being understood. She remembers how many times she settled for attention because she was afraid of being alone. Those moments where she accepted half effort, half presence, because at least it was something. But now, she sees that something was never enough. Love should not feel like waiting for the next good day. It shouldn't depend on moods or convenience. Real love is not an emotional roller coaster. It's balance. It's knowing that someone's words and actions will align even when no one's watching. That realization changes her completely. She begins to raise her standards, not because she's bitter, but because she's learned the value of peace. She's no longer impressed by empty promises or temporary gestures. She's drawn to consistency, to kindness, to stability. She craves the kind of love that doesn't need to be performed, the kind that feels calm even in silence. She no longer confuses excitement with connection. The love she now wants is the kind that doesn't have to shout to be felt. It simply exists, steady and unwavering. This change also affects how she loves herself. She treats herself with the same consistency she once begged from others. She no longer abandons herself to make someone else comfortable. Her standards are not just for others, they're for her own behavior too. She's learning that love without boundaries isn't love at all, it's sacrifice. And she's done sacrificing her peace for temporary attention. When someone new enters her life, she moves differently. She listens more to patterns than to promises. She's patient, not guarded, but wise enough to recognize when love feels calm instead of chaotic. And that calm doesn't scare her anymore. It comforts her, because she's no longer addicted to the thrill of uncertainty. She's addicted to the peace that comes with being valued, respected, and truly seen. That's what redefining love looks like for her now. It's not about finding someone to complete her. It's about sharing her completeness with someone who meets her where she stands. Love, to her, is no longer a storm. It's a steady flame that doesn't need to burn wildly to stay alive. Grace is something that only comes from understanding pain deeply and refusing to let it turn you bitter. When a woman reaches that point, when she's been through enough disappointment to harden her heart but still chooses to stay soft, that's strength in its purest form. She no longer wants revenge or validation. She wants peace. She's not interested in proving anything to anyone, not even to the person who broke her. She realizes that revenge would only keep her connected to what she's already outgrown. So, she lets go. She forgives, not because they deserve it, but because she deserves freedom. There's a different kind of power in that choice. Grace isn't weakness. It's emotional discipline. It's looking at the situation that once made her crumble and saying, "You no longer have power over me." She doesn't need to post her glow up. She doesn't need to show off how well she's doing. Her peace is her proof. She's learned that silence speaks louder than any explanation ever could. She moves through her days with calm confidence, no longer seeking closure from others because she's already found it within herself. That's what grace looks like. It's calm, it's quiet, and it's unshakable. She starts to view life differently now. Every heartbreak, every disappointment, every loss, it all becomes part of her growth. She understands that not everything that hurt her was meant to destroy her. Some things were meant to teach her what to no longer accept. And that realization brings her gratitude, not resentment. She thanks the experiences that showed her her own strength, that stripped her down so she could rebuild herself on stronger ground. Pain doesn't define her anymore. It refines her. It's what shaped her grace, her wisdom, her balance. When she walks into a room now, she carries that grace like a quiet aura. People feel it before she even speaks. It's in her eyes, the peace, the clarity, the self-assurance. She doesn't compete, she doesn't chase, she doesn't compare. She knows who she is and what she brings, and that certainty cannot be taken away by anyone's lack of appreciation. Her worth is not up for debate. It's a fact she now lives by. She respects herself too much to fight for what's not meant for her. The most beautiful part of her return to grace is that she still believes in love. But it's a different kind of belief now, not naive, not desperate. She knows that love doesn't have to hurt to be real. It doesn't have to come with confusion to feel passionate. She's learned that healthy love feels steady, honest, and mutual. And until she finds that, she's content loving her own company. She's no longer waiting for someone to complete her. She's too busy being whole. That's how she rises. Not loudly, not vengefully, but gracefully. Her peace becomes her statement. Her growth becomes her response, and her silence becomes the loudest proof that she has moved on, healed, and reclaimed everything she once lost. Because real strength isn't in how much you fight back, it's in how gracefully you rise above.